everybody, and welcome back to Score Connect, our feature podcast for Score clients and mentors to help you learn more about growing your small business and more about how Score can help. We are so excited today. I am personally very excited to be introducing and interviewing Ashley Johnson. Ashley and I have been friends for years now. We met through Score. We did a lovely symposium together, hit it off right away, and have been friends ever since. So, Ashley, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Such a pleasure.
Absolutely. So, Ashley is here today to talk about the elusive pivot, the pivot of business, the pivot of mindset, the pivot of your whole life when you become a business owner, and welcome to this chaos that is entrepreneurship, right? Ashley, give us a little bit of background, because I know you've had a few big pivots in your life, but let's meet you.
Well, thank you so much. Pleasure to introduce myself here and a little bit about our company. So my name is Ashley Johnson, and I am the co-founder of the ICU company. We created a product called ICU Candle, which helps people to reimagine celebrations. So this concept was started in 2015 when my dad had the idea to put a candle on a cup of coffee and give it to an employee as a thank you. And when he couldn't get the candle to stick on the lid, he chucks it, gives it to her and says, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know that I see you." She actually asked, "How did you know that I don't drink coffee and you gave me a tea here?" He said, "Because I see you." She started crying and said, "No one sees me."
Okay, we are officially a minute and 50 seconds into this podcast, and I'm already tearing up at this story. So this is going to be an emotional roller coaster, everybody. Get ready. Sorry. Yes. Continue.
Well, what is it? It's not a conversation with me if you're not crying. If someone's crying, I'm crying, you're crying.
Very true. We've had a limited number where I have not teared up. Yes.
Or vice versa.
That's so powerful. That's so powerful.
It really was. And it was a moment to the extent that my dad called myself and my sister and said, "Girls, when was the last time someone made you feel seen?" And, it's not just, the movie Avatar, I see you. We really speak in that capacity. My dad speaks in that capacity. And we started talking about what if we could change the way people connect with each other and the way they celebrate one another. And so as we were literally reimagining how we could have these celebrations, we came up with an idea to patent a bow and base, so that, in the video here, I can show you that you literally have a birthday size candle with a bow that can go on a cup of coffee. It can be held in your hand. It can be on a gift card, a greeting card, or a flat surface so that you can use it, yes, for birthdays in a non-cake and cupcake capacity, but you can also use it for milestones or to say, keep going. I see you, you matter. And it was an evolution. We launched officially in 2018, but we started the process in 2015. And between patents and trademarks and launching, we took off and we're off to the races. And within 2 or 3 months of us launching, we were connected to Score, and we had the opportunity to pitch the HSN network through Score's partnership. And that's where I got my first Score mentor, learned how to do a pitch to a buyer. And I have been drinking the Score Kool-Aid ever since to help me through each phase of my business now 3 years later.
It's its own delicious flavor of Kool-Aid, the Score Kool-Aid. I feel like our logo is blue, so I feel like it's like some variation on blue raspberry or something.
Blue raspberry is what I was going to say.
100% is going to turn your tongue very blue when you drink the Score Kool-Aid. But it's like a badge of honor. So and Ashley, we'll talk about this as we go, because you've had a lot of things, cause you, kind of almost force you to pivot in your life. But first of all, if you are listening, if you are watching, go check out the ICU company. This little candle on a bow is, I have a couple of them left. I bought like a box of them, and I've been like selectively giving them to people when it really matters. But they are just brilliant, and they are adorable, and they are so meaningful in a way that's completely unique. And so, you've had this really amazing idea, and we're talking about pivoting today. You've had this amazing idea. It stems from the heart. And a lot of business owners start something because they see a problem, they see a challenge, they've got a pain point, and in their heart and soul, down in the depths of their gut, they know that they can help that they can help fix that, right? And so one of the hardest parts, especially for me as a business owner, I'll speak for myself, is that when you have that commitment to heart-led mission, it can be so hard to have to pivot away from that original, like that original plan, that mindset, that mission, because it's so personal to you, right?
Yes.
And so talk to me a little bit about what those signs look like, right? So like, I'm in my mission, I'm in my, my entrepreneurial journey, I've launched this thing and I get going, and somewhere in there, something changes. What does that feel like when you're coming up on what should be a pivot?
That is such a great question, because now I have 3 years in this and I have a different lens that which I see it. But when the signs, if you will, the warning signs started to happen, they felt like failures. They felt embarrassing, and I shamed myself, which has no place in business. It has no place in this process, right? Because you've just got to get your best foot forward and just try it, right? Yeah. It is innovation. It is process. And for me, when we realized the first signs that things weren't working I was actually, ironically, I was with my SCORE mentor and I was at a chamber meeting and someone came up and she was like, hey, tell him what your product is. And I gave him my 30-second pitch and he looked at me with crickets chirping and he went, what? Oh. I don't get it. Which is such a gift in the big picture to have someone say that and honestly tell you that, not just go, oh, that's great, and walk on.
That sounds great. Yeah. Sure.
Or good for you. This is amazing, and have no clue. But it was a moment where it was like the wah, wah, wah happened. And I went, oh, we're explaining this in a capacity that people aren't understanding. And that forced, or rather allowed, right? You're not forced to have those conversations, but it allowed the opportunity to then circle back with vendors and clients or customers and say, hey, how do you understand this? When I say this, how does it work? Everyone told us, no, they didn't get it. Oh, wow. Our vendors began to tell us, if I don't explain the product here that's sitting on the shelf in the packaging, it just sits there.
They have to hand sell each one.
Yes. And that is not possible for a retail owner. That is a deterrent for them to bring a product in.
Well, and it's one thing if you're selling a car.
Sure.
Of course you have to maybe not. I mean, there's a lot of internet research and they'll drop them off at your house now, or you can get them out of a vending machine. That was actually, in hindsight, that's a terrible example, but you understand what I'm saying. Like, traditionally, you need to hand sell a car or, something of that magnitude, right? You're talking about something that needs to be able to be on, because it's small and it's inexpensive. And that means you have very tight and limited margins. And so you have to be able to sell them in large quantities off of a shelf on their own. Fast.
Yes. Yes. That grab and go. And if it is sitting there and it is requiring the owner to say, hi, hey, have you heard? Candles aren't just for cake anymore. Have you heard you can put this, or do you have, no. And we didn't realize that. And then we also, so that was the moment where we realized in a pivot capacity, our messaging had to change. Then as we went further with our wholesale vendors, we realized, oh my gosh, the design of our packaging, however great it was for that first step, it did not convey just based on the angle of the picture, because the front of our package has a picture of a coffee cup with our bow and candle on top. And it should have been at a 45-degree angle featuring our bow and candle, but the picture actually features a coffee cup. So my vendors have been telling me, guess what? People come in looking for the coffee cup. They think there's a pop-up cup or a lid or anything other than your product in the packaging.
Wow. So that disconnect there is something that, again, we're talking about the warning signs here of pivoting. You felt like something wasn't working, but you couldn't put your finger on it. And then by chance, somebody kind of gave you that aha moment of, let's go back and ask. Let's figure out why that isn't working. Let's directly ask our vendors and our customers. And then the answer becomes very clear that it's not wrong. It's just not working, and you need to pivot.
Yeah.
You need to update that. You need to learn from where you've been and make new and better decisions as you get more information.
Right. And I think one of the things as a new business owner is when you're so deep in it and this is a form of another baby for you, you don't even know. Once you know the problem, then what? And what we did was we just went back to our SCORE mentor and we said, where do we go from here? We know we have a problem and we know it's this, but what do we do? And so they started bringing in subject matter experts who volunteered their time to weigh in. And one of these groups is a marketing team in town. And they had actually said, well, your messages are selling the product to the person who receives it, not the person who buys it. And we went, oh my gosh, our messaging was completely backward. And we're in that process. And as we're in the middle of figuring out this pivot, mildly freaking out because we had 20,000 units with this package design. All of our social media was designed around this, and I didn't know how to change the words. Then I was forced with a life pivot. Life happens, right? We all know life happens. But then when you're launching a business and you're in the bubble of it and you're eating, sleeping, breathing it, and then you're diagnosed with breast cancer at 34 years old,
yeah,
it hits and it forces a pause and a reflection. And I remember that moment of going, we can't lose the company. And I actually think I did a social media post because we were getting ready in October of 2018 to do a breast cancer awareness campaign because our mom is a breast cancer survivor. And now I am the face of the campaign. And getting ready to have a bilateral mastectomy and knowing there's going to be multiple surgeries and not knowing if there were other treatments. And oh, by the way, we're trying to fix the marketing and fix the messaging.
Oh, by the way, you have to do a complete rebrand.
Oh, right. Right. Oh, and by the way, in the middle of this, HSN at the time said, we want to work with you. Let's go.
HSN is Home Shopping Network, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect timing, HSN.
Right.
Would love
American
to.
Dream segment. Right. I'm like, yes, let's go.
Can I fit you in 2020? Like, I've got a lot of openings there. Oh my goodness.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
And I think this is where what you alluded to, where the mindset pivot started. Because I was of the intention at the beginning, I got to go here, I got to go there, I got to meet these people, I got to get the name out, I got to keep going. I've got to get these
You're
meetings.
in the hustle,
oh my gosh,
you're in the grind.
Yes, and the opportunity's here. I'm not going to be the reason that this stops or that I miss the opportunity, opposed to reframing this and going, this is a forced pause. If this is mine, it's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's when. But I have to choose my life and living opposed to whatever this company can do.
And you know me, and I want to be very clear here, Ashley, because we've been talking about, like, what do those warning signs look like, right? You feel something's off, you know, someone tells you directly they don't understand it, you know, there's difficulty moving forward and gaining momentum, right? When you found the right combination, it should have a flow. And that's not to mean like you're going to go out and become a viral sensation overnight and like you're going to, you know, sell 8 million units and all that. Like, it still takes work, but, you know, some of this is just your gut. But then, you know, now what we're talking about is sort of what you just said is, you know, it's my life and it's living. I wanted to note there's some differences here in I'm going to say verbiage.
Yes.
I have had a challenge as an entrepreneur, remembering to just live my life, because I'm so focused on that hustle and that grind and that push and that growth and all those things that, like, I forget to just like go out to dinner with friends. And like, hey, you should just like stop working at some point in the evening-ish hours and like eat dinner without looking at your email on your phone the whole time. Like, there is that kind of living, right? Mm-hmm. What you're talking about in your specific example is your actual survival. Yeah. You had cancer. And so you mentioned something in there that I want to come back to. You mentioned a mindset pivot. And so let's kind of define what a pivot is, because I think that the word itself, I mean, everybody, you mentioned before the Friends episode, which I'm sure everyone like pivot. I'm sure everyone is thinking right now, and it's okay. We're all on the same page with you, and there's a couch and the whole thing. When we're talking about defining a pivot, right? You mentioned mindset. So I think when I say pivot to people that own businesses, the traditional definition, I think like the thing that comes to mind most often is I am going to change what I'm doing how I'm doing it, the market I'm doing it in. It's the activity or the offering, the product, the service, that kind of thing. That's sort of the traditional. But then you just mentioned the mindset pivot. Can you focus in on that a little bit more?
Sure. I was having a conversation with one of my girlfriends who's another business owner in Nashville, and she said to me, "You didn't just do traditional business pivots, you did a mindset pivot." And I didn't even realize it. But I went from looking at what my end goal was, my results, and how I went through it in the hustle, in the grind, in the have the email. And my mindset changed to balance. My mindset changed to how I went about executing these tasks. And my mindset as a whole reflected on what is my intention. I started looking at what is the intention of what I'm trying to create? What is the intention of the words I use and how I engage and who I engage with, right? Because talking to everyone is great practice, but not everyone is your customer or client. Right. And reframing that, instead of throwing the net out and going, whomever catches it, that's great. As opposed to going, okay, my SCORE mentor said to me, you guys are kind of like squirrels right now. I'm going, where, what? Look over there. Look at that. Look at this. And my mindset had to be more focused.
So, and what you just described there about, changing the perspective, defining the intention, that goes back to what we were just speaking about around the reason you got started.
Yes.
And so I think as business owners, a lot of times we get really excited about the thing that we want to do. And you mentioned, you can't, not everybody is your audience. Mm-hmm. You get excited about what you want to do. You rush out into the world and you just start basically word vomiting all of the things that you can think of, yes. Everyone that you can find. And you're just like, I do all of these things and they're amazing. And you wait for something to connect, right? You wait for one person to go, oh my God, I definitely need that. That's great. In the litany of things that you've just thrown at them. And you're like, yay, it's working. And it's like, no, it's not really working, right? I always joke when so I do a brand development workshop with SCORE. And one of the things that I try to teach people is about focusing in on the core value that you are bringing. How are you solving the problem? And Donald Miller has this really amazing program called Story Branding, where, and one of my favorite takeaways from that, if you haven't checked it out, Donald Miller, Story Brand Concept, he even has a singular podcast that is like a 45-minute snapshot of the whole program, and it's gold. But in the middle, my favorite takeaway from that, when we're talking about branding, and I bring it up in my workshop, is that you are not the hero of the story. Yeah. Love you, mean it. You're not the hero. Mm-hmm. The client or the customer is the hero, and you are the guide. Mm-hmm. And so we get so excited about what we've done and created and how we're going to fix everything that we make ourselves the hero. And we run out and we go, I can save you. Here are the 82 different ways I can save you and help you and make your life better. And people go, I don't need saving. I want to figure out my own problems. And then you have to reframe it. You have to change the intention of your words. You have to think through, yes. Because that mission and that fire is in us to help. But a lot of us just sort of we go in the wrong direction right out of the gate.
And I think that is the gift of the entrepreneurial journey, right? You don't know, and reflection, hindsight's 20/20. But I also think, in the same breath with pivot, right? Pivot to me has had a negative connotation to the word for a very long time. And understanding that with pivot, with business, any of these things, right? You don't get to pivot unless you do it. You don't get to realize there's something to change unless you try it. And just trying it, just getting out there.
Right. And so that's where we talked about, so we've had several different podcasts in this series. One of them was on the mental health around being an entrepreneur. And we talked a little bit about that push to grind and the shame that you mentioned, right? How we feel if we don't get it right 100% right on the first try, that's it, we're failures and it's over. Yeah. Because we see all these successful companies and their message and their sort of their image is that they were amazing. Look how amazing that company is. And you don't see all the micro failures, the micro setbacks. And I call them micro because in the grand scheme of it, they are so small because you just have to keep going and you have to keep going, right? So this traditional pivot is the activity that you have to do to keep the business growing, to move in the right direction. You can't grow unless you're gaining more information and making better and new and different decisions with that data. And so you almost inherently have to fail, and then have to fail. What do they say? It's only failure if you quit.
Amen.
It's only failure
Amen.
if you stop. If you keep going, you just learned something new, right? So you have to learn new information. You have to fail, and then you have to change that activity, but also the mindset. You have to shift your mindset towards something more positive. So Ashley, you were telling us about, you get diagnosed with cancer. You're trying to do this huge brand refresh, and then also HSN is calling, and you're like, holy crap, what am I going to do with all this? How did you work through that? Because, there's got to be some support. There has to be some, I don't want to say systems, but like we have to be prepared enough to work through pivots effectively. How did that work for you?
So from the support system, I think that's the key for me, right? I had what I call my tribe. So I was surrounded by a lot of amazing support from the entrepreneur community and my SCORE mentors, because, you evolve with mentors in the process.
You can have more than one, by the way, and maybe not specifically with SCORE, but like collect all the mentors. Like one takeaway from this, have as many as you can. They're like trading cards. You just collect as many as you can get in different little areas and just call. Anyway, yes, all of the mentors.
Yes. And, it was, I'll never forget my SCORE mentor said, in these in-betweens, when I was recovering between surgeries, she said, just push the needle forward a little bit, do the work, do the research, right? And it was giving myself grace to understand the very simple concept, but not easy to execute. Progress versus perfection. I was living in perfection. It wasn't perfect. The packaging wasn't perfect. The messaging wasn't perfect. The daily, use of my time, right? I wasn't working 8 hours a day. Therefore, I was not making progress, and that's not a truth. And so having the wise advice of my mentors to weigh in, and then, having the support of other entrepreneurs who, even when I couldn't share about my product, they were taking the packaging and still showing it or putting it in different things. And, that is something that I never asked for. That was just a beautiful gift that my community provided me. And I think in the process, being aware that you can't hang on with just that grip of, holding it super tight, right?
Yeah.
Like
until you choke it to death, you mean? Until you choke it to death with your insistence on perfection? Yes.
Right.
I'm vaguely familiar with this concept.
Recovering perfectionist over here. My name is Ashley.
Yeah.
And, I think for me, I don't think everyone needs the extreme of cancer to happen to have that aha moment, but the emotion of going, when you have basic needs that need to be met and you can't worry about those things, you do have to relinquish the control. And when I'm in the heels of recovering from a bilateral mastectomy and we find out that the HSN program, American Dream, that we were moving forward to be on was ended and we couldn't move forward in that process, I went, okay, there's a reason for this, and I'm going to allow that to happen. There's a reason that I'm not able to hit the ground running. What do I need to learn here? And, some of this was personal, right? And self-care, but also as the bills mounted from breast cancer, and that savings that I had that would allow me to do this full time, I had to get real with myself and say that at the time I had to get a part-time job. And that felt like a failure because now my energy is part-time in my company because I had to balance it. And that was a pivot that I did not want to make. That was a pivot I was very embarrassed about. I did not share it on social media. I didn't share it to anyone except my very small core group. And what I realized was that's not fair. Because Anavia, if you told me, hey, you know what? We hit a snag and I'm doing this to get this done, I would be like, yes. You do whatever it takes.
Yes.
Way to go.
That's called resilience and ingenuity and all of those things. But we don't like to share those things on social media, right? Like that is a big, and I'm a big advocate for this, Ashley. You know this, right? I had a moment I did not have breast cancer. I had a moment where I have chronic anxiety, depression and panic attacks. And so that is something that I have to work through on a daily basis. And there has to be intentional time spent to make sure that I address my own mental health. But one day, this has been years ago, I posted this big series of posts about me speaking at a HubSpot conference. I'd flown into Boston and like gone into, spoken at this conference, and there's like 400 people, and it's like a highlight of my career. And the next day I flew home. I had a panic attack on the plane, and it lasted for like 3 hours.
Whew.
I don't know. I mean, I kind of know why, but do you know what I mean? Like it was out of the blue. It was crazy. And I was sitting there in my tearful, can't even breathe, whatever. And I don't know why, but I thought, see, this is the thing. This is what you don't see. And it felt so cheesy and crappy and just, I don't know, kind of skeezy almost. I took a picture of myself crying.
Oh,
just a hot mess in this car. I got back to my car from the plane. Lost it all. I am a just bleh, right? And I took a picture and I went to my team first and I said, team, I think we should post this. And they were like, why did you take a picture of this? And I said, for exactly that reaction. Because people see this, they see the highlights, they see the top tier of my life, they see all these things, and people compare themselves to that perfection that we're projecting out into the world. And so to your point, there's a fairness to saying, no, this is not all rainbows and puppy dog tails. This is hard, and it's not always good, and it's not always perfect, and it's not always growing and moving in the right direction. And so the bravery that you had to share that with your close connections at all and get that help and support is really commendable. But I wish that we could talk about that more as entrepreneurs, because everyone has those moments in different ways, but everyone has those moments.
And I think I'm so proud of you for doing that, because you did that before. I don't want to say it's trending, but it is something now, right? In the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of reevaluating our lives. To me, the lens at which I see the world, the celebration of authenticity is increasing. And that was part of our pivot in what was related to mindset of saying, I have to show up authentically in the world. I had one of my counselors that helped me through breast cancer said to me, Ashley, the ICU company cannot grow to the level you want it to be until you can see yourself. That was said to me 3 years ago. And it's finally now that I'm in a place where I can truly see myself, where I can show up authentically with the snot, with the hard days, with whatever it is, and go, you know what? This is real.
Yeah. Snot, by the way, like the snotty face is not like a mandatory part of your pivot,
of the entrepreneurial journey.
But it's likely. It's like statistically likely to come up, I think. Right. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And that's the thing. You have to be able, like you said, you have to be able to see yourself and know yourself, because the same passion that made you decide, I am going to go start this gigantic, scary, all over the place journey of being an entrepreneur, is that same passion that is going to cause, and I know this sounds weird, the excited and the positive feeling. That level of passion doesn't come with the potential for some of the negative, for the anxiety, for the loneliness, for the despair, for the straight panic of just like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Because this isn't working, from the shame of failure. Like when you are that invested in something, it's like being in a relationship, right? Like when you love someone that much, there's so much good that comes with that, but they also have the potential to hurt you real bad. And so when you make a choice to really get in and push forward with a business, there's the potential for both.
Absolutely. And I think no one could have anticipated, maybe not no one, but there's a small percentage, but as a general rule, we did not anticipate a pandemic. And everyone, I don't care who you are, where you come from, everyone has had to do some sort of pivot. And as small business owners, giving yourself grace to go, okay, you know what I thought my pivot would be 2 years ago versus what it is now may look completely different. And for us, we started a service arm. That was not on my radar, but all of the things that I needed as a small business owner who was launching with the world's tiniest budget, knowing, you and I've had these conversations many times, that I could not afford an agency, but I wanted that caliber that, for example, Anavita, you and your company bring, but I couldn't get there because there are certain things that I needed to do first.
Right. And so let's talk about that too, because again, you and I have a shorthand because we've been friends for a long time. So you mentioned, now starting a service industry, and we have both had instances in our businesses where we are offering a product or service to start, and we start running a business, and then we realize that along the way we have learned, created, developed, perfected something, mastered something, however you want to say that is a new sellable thing. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think that this is really important when we're defining pivots. You had to pivot with your brand messaging. You almost had to pivot. I know that the product didn't change, but like everything else about it did, right? So it's almost like this whole new thing that you're selling and talking about. You had to have a huge mindset pivot to say, how am I thinking about my product? How am I thinking about my business? You had life pivots where you're going, I can't, devote as much time and blah, blah, blah. Now you're talking about something more traditional, which is the service that you provide, right? And so it's not that you're dumping what you were doing before, but you discovered something. Can you share with the audience what happened there and what you're doing now?
Sure. So with the pandemic and changing my part-time capacity and realizing our wholesalers, our retail shops are not even in business. Or if they're not open, they're trying to sell online. They're not purchasing additional inventory. Therefore, the wholesale that I would normally sell is not even occurring. What am I going to do? And I started figuring out how I could help others in the same boat as me. I know how to take a product to market. I'm in the learning of the scale phase right now, but I know the initial things to launch. And then organically, people started to say, hey, do you know how to do a Shopify website? Hey, do you know how to copyright? Or, wow, you took my 5-minute pitch, elevator pitch. 5-minute elevator pitch is not an elevator pitch, for the record. But
yeah, no elevator ride is 5 minutes. Yeah, that's way too long. Get off the elevator. Yeah.
But for someone else, not for myself, but for someone else, I could hear an elevator pitch that was that long and take it down to 2 sentences very quickly. And so I started just testing it out and say, well, let me do this. I figured out how to do some basic work on Canva. Let me try this. And it came from a need both in not being able to sell our product wholesale, but then also I unexpectedly went through a divorce. And in that period of time, I needed an income. And so from these forced pivots, these forced external changes, I was given the opportunity to open a service arm of the ICU company. So we still have ICU Candle, and we are slowly but surely inching that along. But we offer services to small businesses or those in the pre-launch phase with copywriting and helping with website templates and then just a consulting aspect. I never ever. And I think that's the key right there. Never say never. Never would have thought that 3 years in we would be this. I remember saying to multiple girlfriends, I'm not an expert. I don't have the expert because I didn't think that I didn't have MBA or I didn't have enough years. And I don't even know what that means, right? I was just putting myself in these, unattainable boxes and ultimately going, no, we can help. We can offer this. So I'm still figuring out the ICU company's service arm right now. You and I've talked about it. I'm figuring out what I like to do versus, what I am willing to stretch myself into and then where I can make the biggest impact. Because just like with our product, right? Everyone deserves to feel seen. And when you are an entrepreneur, you deserve to feel seen in your process and you are not alone, though we often can feel it. So if we can help you to find your authentic voice, to launch in a different direction by saying, hey, we did it. I can tell you the things that didn't work. I can say, hey, let me save you time on going this direction and maybe go that. We're trying it out. So I don't know how long, that will go or what added things we will offer, but that was a pivot that was never on my radar, but it came from a place of necessity, and it is very fulfilling.
Yeah. And so, I heard a couple of things in there, and I think that this is a great sort of, wrap up example of this comprehensive process. You said in there, like, I never ever imagined. I heard you say in there, I found something I enjoy. Mm-hmm. Holy crap. Doesn't mean that you don't love your original product, right? Or that you're not still passionate about that, but like, you found something new that you really enjoy, and listening to your heart and listening to your gut and listening to your mind and just saying, I really like doing this. That's so wonderful. We've talked in another podcast about motivation follows action. And so a lot of people will sit where they are and go, well, until I'm, just brilliantly inspired with the thing that will be my life's passion forever, I'll just sit here and wait for that to come to me. I can't do anything because I don't know what I want to do. I can't move forward. And here's the thing. There's no judgment here, guys. Like, I am a SCORE mentor. There's no judgment in that. I'm telling you, I see that every day, all across the board. SCORE clients, my team members, people who I know in my personal life that go, gosh, you're an amazing entrepreneur. I could never be that because I don't know what makes me super passionate. And I'm like, do you think when I started the marketing company that the best, like my most favorite thing in the whole world to do is to make email blasts? Like, no, I don't wake up every morning just chomping at the bit to get to Twitter. Like, that's not on behalf of other people. Like, that's not, you know what I mean? But like, I had to do something. And then when I did something, I found parts of it that I liked and I moved in that direction. And then I did some more things and I found I really like this thing. And so I moved more in that direction. And so finding those pivots shouldn't be something, like you said, that necessarily just mandatorily happen to you. They should be things that you're choosing based on that experience and where you're finding joy and where you're realizing that there is a better option based on that information that you're getting. And so it's not just a single thing. Well, hey, this product isn't working. I need to pivot. And, I was trying to sell X and that didn't work. And so now I'm going to sell B. It's a totally different product. Like, that's not really how pivots work, guys. They happen all the time on a regular basis in very small doses.
Yes. And I think remembering when the pivot shows itself in the warning signs, you don't have to freak out. There's not a, 5-alarm fire. Oh my gosh, right? It is breathe and process, call your mentor, reach out to the resources that you have, because you can talk these things through and decide, oh, this isn't a pivot. This is a reflection moment of reevaluating, but we can keep going a little bit longer. Or, hey, you know what? No. This is the moment. Seize it. Go.
Well, and having those mentors are really going to help, right? Because like having an outside perspective to say, this is what I think is happening. Here are the facts. And having someone external to go, oh yeah, no, you need to fix that right now. Or, hey, that's okay. People have to update and change their messaging all the time. Like, this is going to take you 4 months. Mm-hmm. That's okay.
Here's one of the amazing things too about what SCORE taught me. You have workshops. You have workshops that are free and low cost, $25 or free, and you can go to other chapters in other cities. You can go to score.org and you have templates. And each of those have been pivot opportunities for me. There's a whole e-commerce series that SCORE Nashville is doing. And these are all nuggets, right? They're little things that create opportunities to go, ooh, I could do that better. Or, ooh, I might need to pivot a little bit in that direction. So
what if? Yeah. Because you don't make those big decisions overnight. You almost have to learn little bits. You have to piecemeal your way through them, because like completely reinventing your whole company a couple times a year is just not feasible. Like, but it's
exhausting.
It's not, it's growth. It's growth. Not everything has to be a major pivot. Sometimes you're just growing and you're learning new things.
Absolutely. I think at the end of the day, my hope is that anyone who hears the pivot has the takeaway for first grace, right? First, I want you to see the image of friends in the couch.
Yes.
Then I want you to remember.
Number one priority. Do that first.
It's okay if a pivot happens.
Yes.
If the pivot is there, you can seize the opportunity and know that there's going to be bumps along the way. You're not going to get it perfectly, but try.
Yeah.
Get your best foot forward and then let it go.
Yeah.
And give it a try, and then have a point in time where you circle back to reevaluate that pivot so that you can decide if it is permanent or if it's just for a temporary chapter.
Yeah. Such great advice. Ashley, thank you for being here to share your story, to share all your wisdom, your well-earned wisdom. And yeah, everybody, thank you for listening. And we will be back with a few more podcasts in our SCORE Connect Tennessee series. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks.